Now at Lowe's, faster quotes start at the Lowe's Pro Desk. Got a material list handwritten on a sticky note or saved as a photo? Perfect. Bring it to us and get a quote in minutes. And if you don't see what you need on the shelf, we'll help you get it. You can access thousands of products beyond what's available in-store or on Lowes.com, right from the Lowe's Pro Desk. Build quotes faster and source the materials you need to keep your jobs moving. Just like that, at Lowe's.
Hopefully by now you've noticed that everyone's a little bit different, from personality to culture to beliefs, any preferences, likes, dislikes, which hand they prefer to use, left-handed, right-handed. And this is a good thing, we're all different. But scientists have proved that left-handed people buy and are persuaded completely different than right-handed people. You need to use a different script. I've said time and time again on the podcast and all my trainings, you need to learn to sell people how they want to be sold. That's the key. We tend to influence people how we like to be influenced, and that's not what we want. We want to adapt to them, persuade them how they want to be persuaded. Now we're talking 10 to 15% of the world here that is left-handed. This is something we need to adapt to. This is something we need to understand. Let's do it.
Maximize your influence. Kurt Mortensen is the author of Persuasion IQ, Laws of Charisma, and the best-selling book, Maximum Influence.
Welcome back to Maximize Your Influence. Kurt Mortensen here, podcast 601, as we talk about left-handed, right-handed people adapting, adjusting, getting more tools in your persuasion toolbox here to master the things that will make the biggest difference in your life. Everything you want in life is on the other side of persuasion and influence. We know that. That's why we're here. That's why we're together. We've learned more about the brain in the last 10 years and the last 100 years combined. That's why we know what we used to do no longer works, and things have changed. Times have changed. Let's become more influential. Let's learn how to persuade on command. Let's learn how to convince with charisma. That's what it's all about. So this selling to a left-handed person versus a right-handed person is all about customizing your presentation, your style, to match how their brain is actually wired. This is not 100%, but right-handed people run mostly on strong left brain logic. Facts, those bullet points, step by step. Tell me how to do it. Left-handers tend to be wired differently and tend to be more balanced, have those cross-brain connections. So they love the bigger pictures, more on emotions, and that just naturally flowing conversation that just makes sense to them. So think about it, 10 to 15%. If you could increase your sales, persuasion, negotiation by 10 to 15%, that's a game changer. So you notice they're left-handed? Hit them with the story. Are they right-handed? Maybe you want to go with authority or logic. Now some people call it cerebral lateralization or brain asymmetry. I don't know if that matters or not, but it does have different names as we look at left-handed and right-handed. Get past the one-size-fits-all. We're different, we're wired differently, and we need to adapt to that. Now, why does this happen? Now, you become left-handed or right-handed by genetics. They've noticed about 25% of the time we inherit this from one of our parents. Sometimes in the womb, there's a switch that goes off, depending on hormone levels, fetal position, early brain growth. A lot of things can make a big difference. I mean, there's other little things that could happen too that could change the hemispheres of the brain and dictate are we going to be right-handed or left-handed. Those things can make a difference. The big ones, the combination of genes and what happens in the womb can dictate are we going to be left-handed or right-handed. Then if you need to know, there's ambidextrous, meaning someone can use their left hand and right hands equally well for the same tasks. You probably see it in baseball. You can bat left-handed or right-handed. I'm not going to talk about that today because it's less than 1% of the world. But ambidextrous people can switch their hands depending on the task. So it's interesting. Right-handed people can process logic better. Left-handed people, big picture. Ambidextrous can speak both languages. Now with the foundation set of what we're talking about today, where we're going, let's shift gears a little bit and get into that persuasion blunder of the week.
Don't!
All right, this one's at a water park. At this place, they hired teenagers to be lifeguards to control the crowds. And these slides are insured, obviously. They don't want anything bad to happen. And if you're over 300 pounds, you can't go on the slides. And so this company puts scales by all the slides, and they're relying on these teenagers to kind of a ballpark and eyeball if someone's over 300 pounds because they can't go on the slides. It's against the insurance, number one. Number two, these slides aren't built for that type of weight. So I'm calling it fat shaming, where you wait in this line and you get up there and someone asks you to get on a scale before you slide. I mean, that's embarrassing. That's shaming. That's a blow to the self-esteem. Nobody in the world would want to go through that. It's like those Disneyland rides or any of those park rides when you're young. Remember that, where you have to see if you're tall enough? This is 10 times worse than that. And you're expecting a teenager to do it? Of course nobody wants to do that. Of course the teenagers don't even want to do it and sometimes pretend they don't see the person. But this is done all wrong. I get the insurance. I get the safety protocols, but you can't put a scale right before the slide. This needs to be done in private as they enter the park, taken aside, and politely get them on a scale. Maybe give them a wristband or something that they can or cannot go. There are better ways to handle this. But of course, they didn't think that through. The person doesn't realize the value of self-esteem, doesn't realize what it means to be overweight or embarrassed of your body. Those type of things, they just aren't getting. So the person that probably did it wasn't thinking it through, was going through logically, didn't understand human nature. That is the blunder of the week. Who would go back? And of course, people get upset. They're going to yell. They're going to get angry. They're going to badmouth the company. When you bruise someone's self-esteem like that, they are going to lash out. They are going to hate you. In fact, the number one complaints against managers in the workplace are all self-esteem related. I talk about that in the Law of Esteem. It's one of the 12 laws of persuasion, maximum influence. So that is the blunder. Don't do that. Be very careful. Think about it. Think it through. But we get focused on logic. We don't think about the emotional side of human nature and persuasion and influence. Now it's time for the weekly scholarly article. And I'm very neutral with politics. It's a crazy world out there, especially when we talk about those politics. And this is titled, Candidates Who Use Humor May Find the Joke Is on Them. So this comes from Ohio State University, Communications Research Reports, and Dr. Olivia Bullock. And they looked at humor, political candidates, and social media, specifically Twitter. And they found political candidates who use humor on social media that most of the time it backfires on them with their potential supporters. Now, as you know, if you've been listening to the show or gone through any of my trainings, there's a direct correlation between humor and your ability to persuade and influence. Now, that's assuming you have time, that's assuming you're doing a presentation, that's assuming you can develop the relationship, and assuming you're not in politics. Because I think the default reaction for any politician is that you hate them, you don't trust them, you don't like them. Just saying, a lot of people are pretty tense about this right now, regardless of party or affiliation. You're in politics. Your trust level's at an all-time low. We know that. So they asked people to view messages using humor for these political candidates. And we're going to gauge is this appropriate or inappropriate. What they found, that they rated a political candidate who was using humor as less credible than one who didn't. And they were less likely to get the vote. You're like, what? Well, basically, people have expectations that politicians will show seriousness and competence even on social media. And sometimes using humor, you're getting too formal too fast. So people looked at these posts from a fictitious candidate, and they had no prior knowledge of the candidate. They didn't know them. And they're assuming with this study that if they knew them and heard them before, that it would probably be different. These are strangers. And the candidate's name was Alex Smith. Now, let me add a little bit to that. Now, that name is a generic name. And we do know that on social media and other places that the more generic, more familiar the name, people tend to like that person. They're more familiar with them. And of course, that varies by culture. But that didn't necessarily take place here. Now, no political party was given for the candidate because you name a party, either side, they're automatically going to hate them or love them. I mean, that's just how we're polarized right now. That's how people think. People are crazy with politics. That if you're one party, everything's bad. If you're another party, everything's good, which is crazy. It's not even reality. In fact, they did a study with this last major election where they brought people into a room and said, hey, this is your political party. They're like, oh, they're awesome. We love them. We're like, oh, we brought you in the wrong room. It's the other party. They're like, oh, we can't like them now. And they'd find things that were wrong with it. They liked them at first, but then they don't just because based on their party, which is crazy. But we won't get into that. So the Twitter had different tweets on infrastructure, education, voting, and donations. And half the participants saw just a straightforward tweet, and the other half saw tweets that were using humor or puns to send a message. One of them was, we're sick of getting bad healthcare. It's time to heal our broken system. And the other one was, we're tired of getting bad healthcare. It's time to fix our broken system. You see the pun there, heal our broken system? The attempt of using that pun backfired on them. And a lot of people said they were not appropriate. They didn't like them. They didn't vote for them. They were deemed less credible than the participants that were straightforward. And the gender and age of the candidate did not affect how participants judged their sense of humor. So basically, bottom line is that people need to be mindful on social media, especially when you're first starting out and people don't know you, especially if you're a politician, automatic hate. Just saying, just put it out there. Let people get to know you a little bit, especially on social media. That's different. When you're face-to-face and you're meeting for a half hour, they get to know you. You can use humor. You could do that. Social media is so fast, so quick that you can't do that until you've developed that relationship. And that is our geeky, scholarly article of the week. Which brings us to some content for the day, some training. Time for listener email.
Oh boy!
Of course, I use your email on the show. You get free access to Influence University. You get more information at MaximizeYourInfluence.com. This is Marcus from New Zealand. He says, Kurt, love the podcast. It made a huge difference in my life, influencing my children, becoming a better leader, and it even got me a raise. I'm also loving the 111 sales hacks. Even though I'm not officially in sales, we all sell for a living, and I'm learning a new tool a day. It's been priceless. Thank you. Hey, Marcus, I appreciate that. In fact, listeners, are you interested in that? I'll put that in the link at MaximizeYourInfluence.com. Marcus goes on to say, quick question. I work with another manager. We're about the same level in the organization, but everything he does is opposite of me. The way we think, the way we lead, the way we persuade, the way we work with teams. Now, I also notice he is left-handed. Could it be that being left-handed causes them to be opposite of me? Well, Marcus, let's dive into that. I had to do a little research here. It's not something I normally talk about, and I'm not here to offend anybody, but our brains are different a little bit. So if you're left-handed, reach out to me and let me know what you agree and disagree with. I'm going to do a lot of research, a lot of studies today on being left-handed. Some people are, some people aren't. No right or wrong, we're different. That's a good thing. So Marcus, I don't have enough information, but let me just kind of give you some general guidelines here about people that are left-handed. How do you sell? How do you persuade someone that's left-handed? Now, this is not a trivial thing. Being left-handed, right-handed changes the game. And it's a useful way to which we can see how the brain develops. So Dr. Cowell, she's a professor of cognitive neuroscience at the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom, looks at being left-handed and right-handed and how our brain works, and how different abilities like language or visual processing are organized within the brain. She says if someone is left-handed, their brain organization is going to be different than someone who is right-handed. So Marcus, it could be true. A left-handed brain could think different than a right-handed brain. You see, the left part of our motor cortex is more developed in right-handers than the right part of their motor cortex. So in left-handers, the right part of the motor cortex is better developed, but that imbalance is much less strong than in right-handers. You see, the way our brain works, everything on our left-hand side of our body goes to the right part of our brain, and everything on the right side of the body goes to the left part of the brain. Now, as I took a deep dive in this research, there's some weird research out there, almost like a bias, some conflicting research, but let me share some of this conflicting, weird, biased research out there. It's almost like, oh, they're different, we're going to attack them, we're going to find something bad, but there's also some interesting good things too. So my left-handers out there, I mean no offense. One study showed that left-handed children were more likely to experience accident, injury, and illness, and behavioral problems compared to right-handers. One study found that left-handers do not live as long. Now, another study contradicts that. I mean, it was a 9-year difference between a right-hander and a left-hander. Now, they said in the study it was because the left-handers live in a right-handed world, and there might be some truth to that. Now, here's an interesting one, believe it or not, I don't know if I do, that left-handers are 11 times more likely to suffer from allergies. They're more likely to be alcoholics, but they do have higher intelligence levels, and they reach maturity faster. They're better at multitasking, and they recover from strokes faster. Crazy, right? But they did find they do have advantage in certain sports, especially one-on-one sports, like a southpaw in boxing, baseball. They found in tennis that 40% of the top tennis players were left-handers, probably because the right-handers aren't used to a lot of their techniques and the way they hit. Left-handers are more likely to pursue creative careers. And here's one you need to know, that August 13th is International Left-Handed Day, if you needed to know. So some weird stuff out there, and I don't know if you knew that the devil is left-handed. Well, that's based on a medieval tradition, and there's a lot of 19th century bias against lefties. It's interesting, in 1860, a left-handed person was put in the league with the devil. That's why a lot of parents forced their kids, even though they're naturally left-handed, to go right-handed, because back then it's estimated that only 2% of the population was left-handed. So what's interesting here is that different sides of our brains are responsible for different things. And so based on a hand we use, one side develops more than the other. Now, left brain functions, like I mentioned earlier, function the right part of your body. But your left brain, when you're left brain, it's more about numbers and written skills, science, math, reasoning, language, logic, and analytical thought. But you've heard this before, when you're right-brained, and that controls the left part of your body, you're more aware of music, holistic thought, intuition, imagination, creativity, art, those type of things. Found out something interesting, that right-handed people associated rightward spaces with positive motion and leftward spaces with negative motions. And so when everything was moving right, that was positive, but things moving left, that was negative. And this helped their theory that lefties were the opposite, that going left was more positive and going right was more negative. Now, since the majority of the world is right-handed, when I'm on a stage, I move to my left, which is the audience's right, for positive things, and I go the other way for negative things. A lot of speakers will agree that the left part of the stage, as the audience is looking at, that's the negative side of the stage. That's where all the negative things happen. Believe it or not, a lot of people swear by that. Another research study found that happiness and anger are correlated with the left side of the brain, while avoidance emotions like disgust and fear are on the right side. And they found that the opposite appears to be true for left-handed people. So remember, both sides of the brain specialize in different things. So just because they're left-handed doesn't mean they're completely opposite. Sometimes they just use their left hand, but their brain is programmed like a right-hander. Now, society doesn't help with this. Oh, 2 left feet, that's a negative thing. My right-hand person, that's a positive thing. So the world does think right-handed because most people are, but you have to adapt. If someone's left-handed, you should adapt to them. Maybe going left is more positive to them versus a right-handed person. Now, Dr. Resnick, who's also left-handed, talks about left-handers that they do see the world in a unique lens. When people are left-handed, usually the right brains are dominant. Now, again, right-handed people tend to be more left brain dominant, and that's usually true for left-handed people, but sometimes left-handed people might have the same brain as a right-handed person. So since left-handed professionals are right brain dominant, that means they're more likely to follow the creative flow of information or processing. While those that choose to work primarily with the right hand, they can be creative too, but they might struggle more with the gut reaction, getting inspiration, intuition, compared to a left-hander. That's why so many writers, musicians, and artists and other creators tend to be lefties. They tend to approach life and their work differently. Now, lefties tend to process information quicker because their brains tend to be connected a little bit more than a right-hander. They tend to be quick learners. They catch on fast after a few tries. Now, they might not be as detail-focused as a right-hander, but they can digest concepts relatively quickly. Now, sometimes lefties prefer to execute deliverables on their own. Maybe instead of a team environment, just get it done on their own. And the studies do show, in fact, this is an Australian study, that left-handed people tend to have faster connections between the right and left hemispheres of their brain. We've talked about that. So they're better at multitasking. Not every left-handed brain, just generalizing here. Another interesting study from Stanford found that when you compare left-handed and right-handed people, that they tend to favor their dominant side. In fact, they showed left-handers and right-handers columns, 2 columns, a left and right-handed column, pictures of people, and they were asked to judge who seemed more happy, honest, intelligent, and attractive. What do you know? Left-handers tend to choose people on the left-hand side, and right-handers tend to choose people on the right-hand side. Remember I talked about earlier? Going left was more positive for left-handed people. Going right was more positive for right-handed people. So how do we apply this? So if you're working with a left-handed person, be aware. A lot of times you just don't even know. It's not even on your radar. Be on your radar. Which hand is their dominant hand? If you want them to choose something, put it in the left-hand column. If it's a right-handed person, put it in the right-handed column. Now, if you're in a group, you're going to have to cater to the right-handed people. That's the majority of your audience. It's just how it is. One-on-one, you want to cater to the left-handed person. So be more aware. Are they right-handed or left-handed? Be more aware that we talked about how they use their brain, how you can adapt and cater to them. Remember, the goal is to persuade them how they want to be persuaded. And follow their lead. As you walk in their office, this is true for anybody's office, they're going to have a busy side of their desk and a clean side of their desk. For most people. I mean, some people's offices are just so dirty it doesn't matter. But you want to sit on the place that's opposite of the cluttered side. So if there's a cluttered side, has the phone and the computer and maybe some papers, and the other side doesn't have as much, sit on the uncluttered side because that's their dominant side, and they'll feel more comfortable whether than the side that has the computer or the phone or the other items. So Marcus, hopefully this answers your questions. I didn't get enough information to know if that's the issue, but be aware, some lefties still have a right-handed brain, and you'll have to adapt to that. You kind of get a feel for that as you talk to them and work with them, but it could be an issue for you. Because left-handed and right-handed, the brain is different, but it's true for everybody. All our brains are different. We organize thoughts different. We have different personalities, different meta-programs. If you want to know more about meta-programs, go to the archives at maximizeyourinfluence.com. But the key factor here is master the skill. Be more aware. Persuade people they want to be persuaded. Like, oh, it's too much information. I don't know. Can I adapt? Yeah, use it. Apply it. And if this increases your persuasive by 10%, this could be a powerful tool to you. So think about it. Ponder the application that I talked about today, use it in your influence, and you'll be able to persuade with power.
Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's room of choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.